Let's finish up with painting the sky. So our goal today would be to finish off this top right portion, this top right chunk of the sky, as well as this small aperture over here and over here. And in those particular spots, you're going to want to go in there with your smaller brush. I have a number 2 over here. A smaller one like number 6 over here will also help out. Just use the one that you were provided with in that bag of supplies, okay? So let's begin with the top right corner above this string of clouds right there. If we take a look at a reference image, right over here, you'll notice that it's a much darker shade of orange, closer to this light brown, okay? So we're definitely going to be blending in using a higher concentration of some of these darker colors, okay? So that's the top right kind of portion over here, and right under it is a very bright area that transitions in our familiar mixture from white to yellow to light orange. Okay, so I think it would be a good idea to start with the lighter strip down over here where I'm mousing over. Okay. Okie doke. So we want a white here, a yellow there, transitioning out to a yellow-orange by the time it gets there. I'm going to take a moment to reconstitute my paint over here. You could do the same. I'll start in with a nice opaque bit of white right over here. I'm going to overextend that slightly into the yellow area. Okay, and then I'm going to grab my yellow after I wash off my brush. I don't need a whole lot of yellow at all. Just a touch of it over here so I can start blending it with that white that I initially put down. If you find yourself in a situation like mine where the yellow is starting to overpower the white, no problem. Just go back in there with the white. The blending process really, it should be feeling more familiar now. Meaning you're able to go back and forth, add in colors as you need. It's a very forgiving kind of process. I'm actually going to get some more white straight out of the tube so I can get better coverage over my lead lines over there. There we go, that's much better. Okay, so that's a pretty quick transition. Maybe I'll blend it a tiny bit more between that white and the yellow area but it's very small, so I wouldn't belabor it too much. Let's move on to the yellow to the light orange over here. So I'm going to wash off my brush. Get some of that yellow on my brush. And I'm going to overextend this intentionally toward the right side, knowing that I'm going to go back in there and blend it in with that light yellow. So I'm switching over to that lighter yellow now. And then I'll start working that in from the left side over here. And right when I get about to this portion, I want to start thinking about, okay, this is about where I want it to transition into the yellow. So I still have a little too much light yellow-orange on my brush, so I'm going to get rid of it on my rag so that I can start blending the yellow and the light orange together here. If we look in the reference image, this little area that we're working on right now, it actually has a peachy orangish tone, okay? Which means that we can add a little bit of white to this area to get to imitate that same sort of color over here, okay? So I'm going to add just a little bit more orange here before I do that. Well, let's try to recreate some of that peachiness. So always before you switch colors, wash off the residual paint off your brush. And right here, I'm going in with my white. To mix that in there. Didn't do a whole lot. It actually started lightening it up a little too much. I think that's happening because the previous layer was so translucent. So no problem. I'm going to switch back over to that light orange and mix it right into that that wash of white that I just put down. There we go, that's looking better. It's more of that peachy orangish tone. I guess it doesn't look too different in the camera, but you can determine for yourself. Okay, it doesn't have to be a perfect copy of the color in the reference image. The main thing you really want to look for is a deeper kind of orange here, transitioning to a yellow halo and into the white sunlight over there. Okay. The smoothness of the transition is what you want to look for mainly. Okay, so let's move on to this darker area. We do have some clouds, and we are going to be just avoiding the clouds for now. Okay, we're going to paint all the areas of the sky around the clouds. Main thing that we want to observe here is the overall sort of shape of this dark area. Okay, it kind of snakes and transitions into that orange streak that we had on the left side. But definitely over here, where I just circled, that's something closer to a light brown. And then we have some of these kind of orangish shapes that are streaking in there. Okay, and then it transitions into a yellow by the time it gets to the top of the sun. Okay, so those are some of the things that we want to keep track of. So let's try to recreate that. I'm going to go in this area with a bit, with some of that burnt umber. Got to reconstitute it over here. Sorry, I think I said burnt umber. It's actually called burnt sienna. All right, so I've got some burnt sienna on my brush. I'm going to work that into all of these areas in between the clouds. And you'll probably notice, like I am right now, that as you paint this in, this is probably a little too dark to start with. That's okay. We can mix colors right on the paper and edit it as we go. So I'm covering all the areas around the clouds, but I'm not going all the way down to that strip of color gradation that we just created. And I'm going to map out, let's see, some of these areas like we see over here. Looks pretty rough for now, but don't worry, we're gonna blend it in much better in a more subtle way. So I'm gonna change out the color, and let me think here. We want this brown to look not as dark for sure, right? Not as dark, not so a little more neutral. So what we can do to start with is blend this area in with a bit of white to take off some of that edge. So a small amount of white. Now that's starting to overpower it a bit, so I'm going to add a tiny bit of water on the tip of my brush so that the white mixes and reactivates the brown a little easier. Now that's looking much closer to the type of light brown that I want. Okay. When it comes to this very sharp line now that we have between the light brown and this this strip of color that we have over here, we do want a smoother blend between those areas, but it's tricky because it's basically just one brush stroke width of transition that we gotta manage here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is get my light orange, mix it right in, but in a very, very thin area. I'm gonna try to blend that brown into the bottom colors. So washing off my brush before I switch colors, getting some of that orange. And I just want a thin strip of orange right there. In fact, I think I'm going to switch my brush. Now that I put down the color, I'm just going to switch it to my tiny brush. It doesn't have any paint on it, and I'm only using it to blend out, okay? Between that orange that I put down and that brown up top over here. From what I can see, I probably need to lighten this whole area just a little bit more. So using my small brush, I'm going to add a wash of white over this whole area and blend that in. I might have overpowered the brown just a little too much. So again, as far as blending goes, it's really a back and forth sort of situation here. No problem. I'm just going to add a touch more brown and then blend it in there from top to bottom. And since we are going in and working into these tight areas, that's where a small brush like this will give you easier time. Okay, what I think I want to do now is start from the bottom and push up that dark brown just a little bit, okay, by adding in some white and some orange, starting from the left side and just blending that slightly more upward to push it back up. So here's a little bit of white. I'm going to switch back the colors to that bolder orange that I got. Okay. And then I'm going to get the paint off of that brush, dry it off on my rag, and just use the clean brush to blend in this small area over here. Okay, let's leave the top right where it is for now. And then let's start to blend in this area of brown into the rest of the sky over here. I think what will be good is to grab some orange and start transitioning into the little bit of yellow that we have over here, and then just get a smoother blend between this lighter brown and this darker orange over here. Okay. For me, I'm gonna need to remix some of that orange over here, so give me a moment to do that. Okay. So I've got the orange on my brush, and I'm working it into this area on the left side of this brown. And I'm on purpose trying to reactivate that brown. so I could blend it a little smoother into the orange area on the left. It's not working out too well for me. That's all right though. I think I'm using a little too little paint right there. Okay, so I'm gonna have to grab some more paint out of the tube. And I'm using that paint, that light yellow and the scarlet red, to mix up a little more of that orange that I had before, but with a much stronger level of opacity, much more paint in the brush. There we go. Now I have much better coverage of with the orange that I'm putting down. There we go. So along with that orange, I want to set down a little bit more yellow right over here at the top of the sun and around the rim of the where the white sunlight wants to be. And I am going to have to blend that upwards a little more as well. But let's first start with the yellow. Yellow over here, nice and opaque. And a bit much more yellow on the bottom side over here before it transitions into the white sunlight. I'm going to go back in there with the white straight out of the tube to start blending this area right there that I'm pointing at. And right here, we're just trying to get a nice blend, smooth blend between the darker brown, the lighter brown, I mean, the light brown, the orange, and the yellow, as well as the white. It's kind of a complex area to work with, and you're essentially trying to achieve a sort of a smooth flowing band of color in the sky. Okay, like we've been doing, it is going to require us to go back and forth. It's not something that you're going to really get in the first like couple of strokes. So I'm going back in over here with the brown to add some of that back in. But again, that's a very strong color, so I don't need very much of it. I'm going to blend that in with the orange. Go back in there with the yellow over here. I'm starting to like that a little better. I'm just going to work in my clean brush to blend out this edge between the yellow and the brown to be a little smoother. And finally, just a little bit more white in the sunlight, and I'll blend that upward into this yellow area, but not very far. Okay. So that was a pretty complex top right corner that we just blended in there. Okay. It's okay if your painting doesn't look exactly like what is being produced here. It's going to be quite difficult, and it's honestly not really the point either. I'm just trying to give you guys a sense of what the work process is like. The main thing you want to be looking for is the main thing you want to be making observations from is the reference image itself. Okay. The rest of the sky I'll leave for another video because this one was pretty long. Okay, this one was almost exclusively focused on this top right corner. Okay, the next one is going to be this area over here, in between these two strings of clouds, and then these two apertures over here where we'll be working with that same small brush. I think that's the most appropriate. Okay, all right guys, good luck with this. I'll see you in class.